Welcome to the Rotowire Prospect Podcast, sponsored by WinBet. I'm Clay Link here with Rotowire.com's lead prospect analyst, James Anderson. James, trade deadline looming. Trades are flooding in. I mean, I've been pretty surprised by all the movement. We got a lot of guys to talk about who are on the move. I know right before we started, Jesus Luzardo, pioneer in the gaming injury classification. I don't even know, but I was a little surprised to see that. We'll talk about that momentarily, but how are you, man?
I'm doing well.
That's good.
I'm
staying afloat with all this news.
Well, our talented news crew has been handling most of it. I've been obviously adjusting like the team top 20s whenever a prospect from there gets dealt. But I mean, I've been working on the dynasty update, and I was kind of dreading it for a while leading up to it, but it's actually been kind of fun. Got, I've kind of got the juices flowing, like already sort of looking forward to drafts next year. Lord willing that there's a season next year, but like it's been a lot of fun to kind of see
recalibrate a little bit.
Yeah, just kind of get because I mean, obviously I'm very focused on how the players on my fantasy teams have been doing this year, but when I do the dynasty rankings, I'm obviously looking at how everyone's doing, and it's been fun to kind of get a really in-depth look at all that. So I'm actually doing much better during this update than I thought I'd be doing.
Nice. We'll talk about those a little bit, preview those a little at the end of the show. Anybody though, like putting you on the spot, but anybody you kind of, as you dug in, were like, wow, I didn't realize he was this good or this bad? Cody Bellinger, I didn't realize until recently just how bad he's been.
Yeah, I've been advising people to not trade Cody Bellinger right now because I think this is going to be something where we look back and this will be the low point of his value, but I totally get the frustration. I only have him in one league, and needless to say that team's not contending this year. But I honestly I put in some guys into the outline of guys who have been pretty bad, but a couple guys who I was high on, before the year, and I just kind of gave them a big vote of confidence. I mean, so I guess not necessarily answering your questions. So I've got them on plenty of teams. I'm not surprised by how they're doing, or didn't discover how well they're doing. But I really love what I'm seeing from Andrew Vaughn and Austin Riley, especially when you take in the context of Andrew Vaughn's season. Just the fact that he's been well above league average hitter, and he's been playing out of position, and he's jerked around early in the year. Like if I've got Andrew Vaughn on a dynasty league team, I'm feeling really good about where that's headed in the coming years. I mean, his spray chart specifically is just absolutely picturesque. I mean, he hits lasers all over the place, and I think he's only going to get better. I mean, I think the strikeout rate's only going to come down, the walk rate's only going to go up. Austin Riley, I mean, I've sung his praises before, but I mean, for this guy to have gotten to this place with his plate discipline as quickly as he has, I didn't even really see that coming. Like, walk rate up over 10%. I mean, he's just been a beast. So those are two guys that are trending up, but I've got some big fallers that we can talk about towards the end of the pod.
I see. Yeah, it's never too early to start thinking ahead to next year. And I was thinking the other day about dramatically scaling back my leagues. I think I'm going to have to. Just, you leave some kind of just abandoned, and not fully abandoned, but I just feel like I neglect some. And I'd rather trim down to like 5 or so next year. But next year is going to be a weird season. A guy who's been shockingly bad, and we talked about him at the very top, but Jesus Luzardo, no longer prospect eligible, but he was dealt today as I think it was straight up 1-for-1, but plus cash for with Starling Marte from Miami in exchange for Luzardo. Kind of crazy to see his stock fall this much. He has dealt with injuries, but performance-wise, I'm not putting a lot of stock into the 38 innings we've seen this year.
Yeah, I noticed like the immediate reaction on Twitter was just like, "Oh man, what a great job by the Marlins." All that stuff. Like, oh god, they got such a great haul for Starling Marte. And I mean, I think it's probably going to be tough for another team to come in and beat that offer. But I think the A's deserve a ton of credit here. I think that this is the type of move that the A's are one of the few teams in baseball that actually makes this type of move. And I think it's something to be commended when every team is just clutching tightly to all their young, talented players and just refuse to really make those sort of big win now moves that might be something that they look back and regret. It actually, kind of reminds me a little bit of back when the A's traded Addison Russell for, I think that was Jeff Samardzija and Jason Hamill, maybe. Like everyone at the time was just like, "Oh man, the Cubs, what a great pickup, getting Addison Russell." I mean, the A's knew more about Addison Russell than the Cubs did, and they were like, "Yeah, this guy's thought of as a top 10 prospect in the game, but we're trying to win this year, and we need the horses to get it done, and we're willing to move this guy because we think he might be a little overvalued." I mean, the A's know more about Jesus Luzardo than any team in the majors does, and they were willing to move him for a very, very good player, but a rental. And I just, my hat's off to them. I mean, I would probably do that deal if I'm Miami as well, but I don't think the A's are getting enough credit for being willing to trade a player like that for a guy to help them win this year.
Yeah, and we've talked about how you don't really see these kind of names moved all that often anymore. Maybe Luzardo doesn't quite fit in that mold anymore, but because the shine's worn off a little bit, but still a little surprising. And yeah, I give the A's credit for having the stones to make a move and maybe take a little backlash. But if they can finally get over the hump and win this year, it obviously looked great. Now Abraham Toro was dealt. It was the Graveman deal last night. So Toro was kind of like, wasn't he like taking BP in the other jersey? And then he hit a home run, a 3-run homer late. So quite a debut for him. I know you were high on Abraham Toro as a prospect. Do you think this move, this change of scenery leads to another step forward? Or do you think he's kind of this bench guy, part-time player for the rest of his career?
Well, I think it's a really great trade for his dynasty league value and obviously like his redraft value because he was about to go back to a part-time role once Alex Bregman came back. And now I think he's going to get as much as he can handle in terms of playing time with Seattle. So just moving from that spot where, he was fairly blocked long term, I would say, in Houston, and would have needed to really sort of force the issue. Like he was going to need to really force them to find a spot for him if he stayed in Houston. Now we get to actually just see a nice long runway for him to really sort of see what he's got. I was very high on him as a prospect. I was thinking back to like 2019. Like Trent Grisham and Abraham Toro were kind of like right next to each other in sort of like the 30s in my top 400 as kind of big, guys who really improved their stock in 2019 in the minor leagues. Obviously, we've seen what Trent Grisham has gone on to become. But Toro, he's had some opportunities here and there, hasn't made the most of them. And so that's kind of led to sort of limited opportunities. He's basically needed an injury in order to get playing time. And, he's done better this year than he did in 2020. But, I still think there's something there. I mean, he makes contact at a really good clip. I mean, you see what he did in AAA. Was walking way more than he was striking out at AAA. Had a strikeout rate under 12% at AAA as a 24-year-old. So, I mean, at the very least, this guy is a really good quad A player. And I think, when you combine the power that he's shown in the upper levels with the contact skill, he's kind of a sneaky athlete too. Like, he doesn't really look that athletic, but he's got like 3 steals so far this year. Like, I'm very excited if I have Toro in a dynasty. It might not work out, maybe he just kind of settles in as a guy who no one's ever really that satisfied with him being an everyday player for them. But I just think it's really encouraging that he's going to get this look now over the rest of the season. And, I kind of think no matter how he does, I'll probably be in next year on Abraham Toro, assuming that they haven't brought someone in ahead of him on the depth chart. But I'm into Toro. I'm not willing to kind of give up on him yet, and I think that was a sharp move by the Mariners.
Always good to see a guy get that fresh start, and we'll see what he does with it. Abraham Toro. I'm old enough to remember when he was Abraham Toro Hernandez on some sites, and that was not that long ago, but it's like 2 years ago. But yeah, for Seattle, I imagine Paul Sewald steps in as the closer, although I can't wait to see what else they do, because Jerry DiPoto said this move to trade Graveman when we're 9 games over 500 doesn't make sense as a standalone deal, but just kind of to clear space for other moves. So sounds like the Mariners will be pretty active and maybe buyers, even though it kind of doesn't really look like it by trading Graveman. But Seattle's moving and shaking. I kind of like what they're doing. Now, it seems like the Nelson Cruz deal was like a year ago, but just because so much has happened since then. But it was, I think, last Thursday, because Todd and I talked about it on XM on the MLB Network radio show on Saturday. And I noticed even then you had updated your individual top 20s for Minnesota. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it looked like Joe Ryan, the headliner in that return for Minnesota, to Minnesota for Nelson Cruz, slots in immediately as one of the Twins, top 5 prospects, maybe top 3.
Yeah, I had him. I have him at 3rd in that org right now, and I have Drew Stratman at 11th. So I think the Twins did very well. I know, I had some Twins fans who I'm friends with, lamenting the fact that Nelson Cruz, who's probably the most exciting player to watch on that team these days, was no longer going to be there. But I mean, that's a pretty nice haul. 2 guys with 6+ years of team control, who I think both have a chance to be good starters. Joe Ryan has long had one of the best fastballs in the minors, and it's just been a question of how well he can develop the secondary pitches. Just like with Abraham Toro, this is a good trade for both Joe Ryan and Drew Stratman's dynasty value, because as smart as the Rays are, as talented as they are, it's not an org you want to have a pitching prospect come up in, especially one who doesn't have that elite like Shane Baz type of upside where they're going to be given every chance to start. You could have easily envisioned the Rays moving Joe Ryan into a 3 to 4 inning role, or same thing with Stratman. And now that they're with the Twins, they'll be given every opportunity to start, I would think. And they're both very close to the majors. I mean, I don't know if they're going to debut this year with the Twins. They've got lots of pitchers that I think could warrant a look later this summer. But I think it's a good move for both those guys' fantasy values, because they go to from an org that is very, very conservative with pitcher usage to. I mean, the Twins are just kind of a normal team when it comes to that type of thing. So I think they'll be given a chance to start. And Joe Ryan, I mean, statistically, he's probably better statistically than he is realistically. Just because I think the fastball alone, he's able to have a ton of success against minor league hitters. So I mean, these aren't top 50 prospects. I think Joe Ryan might be borderline top 100 for me right now. But a lot of that's just due to proximity, because I think we're going to see Joe Ryan probably spend pretty much all of next year in the majors.
Before we move on, let's do a quick word from our sponsors. Now we are back on the Rotowire Prospect Podcast, sponsored by WinBet. I'm Clay Link here with Rotowire.com's lead prospect analyst James Anderson, talking about some of the moves that have already gone down ahead of the trade deadline. More to come, and I saw some rumors that maybe Joey Bart on the move, but we'll have to wait and see what San Francisco does. I know you like generally what they've been building there, and that window has been forced open. I think they were the first team to 60 wins this year, the Giants. Pretty insane. But they're, cross bay rivals, the A's, in addition to getting Starling Marte. They also brought in Andrew Chafin, kind of an underrated move, because Chafin, pretty darn good, bullpen piece to help them win. Now, Greg Diekmann heading to the Cubs. The other way. What do you think about Diekmann? And now that he's been moved, do you see him playing pretty soon at the big league level?
I don't know when we see him.
Daniel
I'm sure
Palencia, by the way. I'm sorry to cut you off. Daniel Palencia was also in that move. Especially notable.
I assume they're going to probably find a taker for Chris Bryant and probably Anthony Rizzo. And so, assuming that they kind of clear some spots, we probably do see Diekmann. He's old. He's already 26, and he's never played in the majors. So, kind of a fringe top 100 guy. He is on there right now. With him, the big thing has always been the power. He's got a 32% hard hit rate. Strikeouts have been a huge part of the package with him, and it seems that by cutting those strikeouts this year at AAA, he's maybe selling out for a little less power because he's not hitting for the type of power that we've been accustomed to. But I'd probably bet that he's a quad A guy. I'm not overly confident, but as the Cubs sort of switch into a bit of a mini rebuild here, he will at least, sometime soon, he'll get to a point where he's getting all he can eat in terms of opportunities. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. Again, I'm not overly optimistic, but that's a solid flyer to get back if you're dealing a reliever.
And I said Daniel Palencia, not all that notable, but I guess he can touch triple digits. So at least a lively arm who could develop into something there. James, with Adam Frazier getting dealt, the Pirates get back Tucupita Marcano, Jack Sawinski. Like out in San Francisco, I know you like what they're doing in Pittsburgh as well in terms of building up that system. What do you think about the return for Adam Frazier?
Yeah, I thought it was great. Marcano, he's basically big league ready. He broke camp with the Padres. That was probably more a product of him being on the 40-man and then dealing with injuries, but he's at least someone that's now in the mix as someone who could compete for an everyday job. He can play kind of all over. So I think he'll get some looks at second base. Probably will get some looks maybe at shortstop, maybe in the outfield. But that's a nice piece to get back for Frazier, who, was having a career year, but obviously wasn't a part of their long-term plans, just given how much was left on his team control. So I like Marcano as a guy to go add in dynasty leagues, but he's probably already rostered. He's just got a really sound approach. Doesn't have many weaknesses, but not a ton of juice there. He's not going to hit for a ton of power, but he can steal some bases. Sawinski is a pretty interesting flyer as well. He's a pop-up guy this year, 22 at AA, 15 homers in 66 games, striking out a lot, but also walking a lot. So, Sawinski probably just ends up being kind of like a quad A guy eventually, but he's at least there's something there just based on what he's done this year. So I think that's a fine second piece in that deal. So, yeah, I continue to like what the Pirates are doing. They're basically just bringing in, and we'll get to the Yankees trade in a second, but they're basically just bringing in a bunch of guys to compete for spots. And the hope is that, one of those guys sort of separates himself at every position, and they have something to build around.
Nice. And yeah, Marcano looks like his success rates on the base pass not particularly good in the minors. 15 successful steals, 16 caught stealing in 2019. But does have a little splash of speed and was hitting pretty well. I was wondering why he was already on the 40-man, but I guess they had to put him on for Rule 5 protection. But, only 3 years prior to this year of pro experience. So I'm a little surprised that he was Rule 5 eligible. But I guess the Rule 5 rules are weird, but it's like, what, 4 pro years or 20-plus years old? I forget exactly what it is.
There's different there's like an age cutoff where it's like 5 years or something if you sign as a teenager, and 4 years if you sign like out of college or whatever. Baseball's got so many random ass rules.
Yeah, it's hard to keep track of them. By the way, Ken Rosenthal reporting that the Astros close to acquiring Yimi Garcia. So Astros really beefing up that bullpen. But other players on the move over the past week: Hoy Park, Diego Castillo, the other Diego Castillo, not the one with the Rays, but the Yankees traded to the Pirates for Clay Holmes. Park was on that, Jeff Zimmerman, our buddy, does that like Luke Voigt / Max Muncy finder. Basically, looking at guys who are just crushing the minors, a little old. And Park was on that. Is he a notable prospect, or do you think this is just kind of a guy old for his level, just mashing at a age inappropriate level?
Probably the latter, but he does have pedigree. He signed for $1.1 million, I think, back in 2014. He's been on and off the top 400 dating back to I think 2017, 2018. So like Hoy Park's, he didn't come out of nowhere, but he is a little old, and he had been, kind of passed over and not given much of a look by the Yankees. And
age inappropriate doesn't sound right for guys old for his level. So I'm sorry to Hoy Park for saying he's age inappropriate. It sounds scandalous.
But this is the type of guy, though, that I think teams like the Pirates should be willing to take on. And I mean, there's lots of different resources. There's like draft picks, there's international bonus pool money to spend, but like playing time is a resource, and you can give guys like Hoy Park some opportunities at the big league level that they might not be able to get on a team like the Yankees, and you can see if there's something there. And if there's not, then you move on. But the Pirates are in a position where they can give guys like that a look and try to uncover something. And I mean, you can't not be impressed by what he was doing at AAA. So, I mean, I think the fact that the Yankees didn't keep him on the 40-man even prior to this trade, they obviously weren't huge believers. But I mean, I think that, again, it's a strong move by Pittsburgh. And Diego Castillo, again, a little old for the level that he's tearing it up at. And the hard hit numbers are not that great. He's below 25% hard hit, which isn't great for a 23-year-old at AA, but you got to like the contact rate. And, he's had a good year. So again, probably doesn't turn into an everyday player, but the Pirates just now have so much depth. They really have one of the deepest farm systems in all baseball. So that competition, you hope you bring these guys in, and the cream will rise to the top, and hopefully you get somebody out of all these deals.
With Hoy Park, you love to see him at AAA with as many walks as strikeouts. 46 walks to 46 strikeouts at Wilkes-Barre. Over 223 plate appearances. Off to a little bit of a slow start in the Pittsburgh organization, but I kind of wonder if he's a pickup for the rest of the season. Kind of because, like you said, playing time is currency, and I think they should play this guy. I mean, there's no service time games to be played, obviously, and he's already Yeah, 25. I think you see what you got there and see if you got something in Hoy Park. Now, is Diego Castillo, I said the other Diego Castillo, but does he have a higher ceiling than the current Diego Castillo?
Probably not. I mean,
Okay.
I would take the guy who's had success in the majors and has gotten saves in the majors over the 23-year-old hitter at AA who was below league average in 2017, 2018, and 2019. He's just kind of a flyer, right? Like, I mean, Diego Castillo with the Rays, you can at least, you think you're probably going to get like 15 saves a year from him. So I don't think this Diego Castillo's going to reach that level of relevancy, but we'll see.
Now, I saw that the Mets have some concerns about Kumar Rocker's elbow. Not really surprising given what we've known about him, and his stock was falling. Do you think he maybe passes up signing with the Mets, and maybe the two sides just can't come to an agreement given his health?
It seems like there's some hardball going on with the negotiations. They've got 4 days, I think, to reach a deal. I hope he signs. I hope they can kind of come to some sort of agreement, and he can rehab whatever it is. And if he needs to go under the knife, I'd rather him do that in a big league organization than at Vanderbilt or something like that. But yeah, it's just a bummer, all we can really do now is just sort of point out this fact, point out the fact that he might not sign for anyone who has a first-year player draft coming up. You probably want to just take him off your board. But I hope he signs, and I hope everything gets resolved. But just kind of a big bummer because he's one of the more fun players from this entire class. I mean, it was already a class where you had Will Taylor and Peyton Stovall going to school, two of the more exciting prep hitters. I mean, if we lose one of the best college players from the class from it too, I mean, it's just going to be an all-time mediocre class.
It's true. Well, more to come, but real quick, a word from our sponsor, WinBet. Got a new read from them. If there's one thing we appreciate here at Rotowire, it's making good decisions, and even more so, making the right decision. Listen up, folks. I have an incredible offer for you with Rotowire's newest partner, WinBet, the premier digital casino and sportsbook app. WinBet is now the exclusive partner for Rotowire's fantasy podcasts. WinBet brings you all the latest action with a user-friendly interface, moneyline bets, boosted parlays, over-unders, round robins, live betting, and so much more at your fingertips. Want a break from sports betting? Head into WinBet's digital casino and take a spin on roulette, double down in blackjack, slam the slots, or try your hand at baccarat. I don't think I'm saying that right. WinBet is currently available in 6 states: Colorado, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Tennessee, Virginia, while rapidly expanding. At WinBet, the possibilities are limitless. WinBet is currently offering all RotoWire listeners a risk-free bet up to $500 on your first wager. Download WinBet now. That's WYNNBET. WinBet, the exclusive partner for RotoWire's fantasy podcasts. James, I don't know if it's stashing season or not, but you got any stash candidates you want to throw out there?
Yeah. I want to start with an old friend first, Luis Garcia of the Nationals. I began the stash last week in the stake league with Luis Garcia. I mean, it's crazy. It's stashing season in our 16-team stake league. Yeah, I mean, it's always stashing season.
Yeah, that's true. I'm still stashing Bobby Witt, for Christ's sake. Yeah,
dude, that stash will pay off.
I hope so. It looks like this Mike Trout have been sitting on obviously for 3 months, whatever it's been, like all Mike Trout fantasy managers, and that one's looking like that may not pay off. At a setback, and man, it's a real bummer. The season just the hits keep adding up. It's been a tough year, fantasy-wise.
Yeah, but anyways, Luis Garcia. Well, it's actually been my best year, so I can't I'm not.
Oh, I'm not. I'm not doing too badly. I just mean like the injuries just keep piling up. Like when it rains, it pours, man.
Yeah. I mean the Trey Turner COVID diagnosis was far from ideal. That's keeping me up. But I was sort of hoping that after that news went down about Trey Turner that Luis Garcia might get the call right away. It hasn't happened as of when we're recording, but I mean he's just turned 21 a couple months ago, which is just crazy for me to think about. And he's hit 13 home runs in 37 games at AAA. Obviously, there's a big gap in competition between AAA and the majors, but I mean that's the same amount of home runs he hit at low A, high A, double A, and the majors combined, and he did it in 37 games. And I always loved the hit tool with Luis Garcia, and he's still hitting for a high average. He's hitting 303, great strikeout rate. But finally getting to that power, I mean, I have no idea how legit it is, but I mean, you can't say that he's old for the level. He should still be at double A based on his age. And so he's just raking at AAA right now. The Nats clearly moving on into sort of a rebuild of their own. So I don't really know what they're waiting for. I think he's going to be up pretty soon. And, I know lots of people, if you're like me, finding a middle infielder in your competitive mixed leagues is tough to do right now. So Luis Garcia is pretty interesting. And then the other guy that I'd mentioned who I've probably been asked about Jose Miranda of the Twins more than almost any prospect over the last couple of weeks, and for good reason. I mean, he's just on a total tear right now, and I think you might trade deadline. He can play multiple spots in the infield. Two guys that if you're really hurting for an infielder, I think we'd probably see both of them before we record next.
A couple real quick notes. So just seeing on my Twitter feed, Jack Leiter, $7.922 million. That according to Evan Grant of the Dallas Morning News, that's Leiter's signing bonus. So I believe that's one of the highest. I believe that's the highest for an arm since Garrett Cole. One of the highest signing bonuses or richest signing bonuses over the last 10 years. And then Brian De La Cruz, outfielder, was the one traded for Yimi Garcia. Is it Brian De La Cruz a notable prospect or not really?
Not really.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't think you'd get much for Yimi, but I do kind of like him. But okay, I just saw that, so I wanted to ask you real quick. Now, Pedro De Leon was the guy you bumped up on your rankings. We talked about him as a riser on your latest top 400 update. He was a double green arrow up guy, but now out 6 weeks with a fractured pinky. Do you think that kind of takes a debut this year off the table?
Yeah, it's a huge bummer, but I think it certainly probably takes that off the table.
You thought maybe he would play a little outfield if at the end of the year, remote chance.
Yeah, I don't see it. I mean, I think he would have to beat that timeline by a couple of weeks, I think. And then even then, the minor league season is going to be over by then, so it's not like he can go rehab it anywhere. But what I do think it means, which is good news to anyone who's going to be checking out Arizona Fall League games this year, is I think it pretty much makes Pedro Leon a lock to go to the AFL to make up for lost time and kind of set up an early 2022 debut.
Very nice. Glad to hear that they are playing the Fall League this year. I thought that was very much up in the air, but glad to see them announce that. So that's pretty awesome. Now, James, after your top 400 prospects list, you shifted your focus to the dynasty rankings. Do you have a published date in mind for those?
Yeah, tomorrow. So Thursday. So depending on when you're listening to this, it might already be up, but I'm working on finishing those today, tomorrow morning, and then they'll be up tomorrow. The goal was just to get them done before the trade deadline. I know that a lot of dynasty leagues probably have their own trade deadlines around the big league trade deadline. So hopefully you can put those to use before making your last minute trades to try to go win a title or to try to sell your win now pieces for people that might help you win a future title. But yeah, I mean, it's been a lot of fun, just kind of going through a lot of the players who've been sort of not really on my radar, and just sort of seeing how everyone's doing. I mean, there's probably not as much movement on this one as there was on the last one, but there were some guys where I was just like sort of shaking my head, like, why the hell did you have that guy so high, and that type of stuff.
Yeah, well, we'll preview those, but I am glad to hear you're doing really well in most of your leagues, James. Are you going to be out there moving and shaking in deals? Are you pretty well set? How active are you in trade talks right now?
I've been having some talks. Friend of the show, Rob Sherwood, was trying to get Julio Rodriguez off me in one dynasty league that I'm trying to win, and he was not interested in putting Alek Manoah in the deal, so talks fell through. But there's a lot of chatter going on in some of my dynasty leagues right now. I'm kind of in that sort of barely cashing zone in a few, and trying to make up some ground, but I don't want to do anything stupid either. You know, I mean, you kind of want to, you want to keep a cool head. I know a lot of people are making big trades because they're fearing a lockout next year. I think there's some validity to that. It's a lot easier making trades right now, I think, if you are a clear seller than if you're a clear buyer, because especially in leagues where you can trade for like draft picks. Like I'm in a couple keeper leagues, and in keeper leagues, like draft picks are great currency, and so you can sell off all your old guys and get those picks back. But in true dynasty leagues where you're contending, I mean, it is tough because there's, you know, everyone wants the like Julio Rodriguez or Bobby Witt or whatever on your team, and I think you gotta really drive a hard bargain on those guys, because that's kind of the absolute cream of the crop for dynasty leagues.
Yeah, you got to be willing to say no, and you got to be willing to just walk away for a little while, and maybe you'll revisit things, maybe not. But yeah, you can't just be taking a trade just to do a trade. Yeah, I haven't done a lot of trades this year. I did make one big deal in the Rotowire staff keeper league with our buddy Eric Segrist. I acquired Nick Castellanos, Ozzy Albies, a few other pieces, India, and traded away Jazz Chisholm and Alek Manoah. But then Acuna got hurt, Castellanos got hurt. So now I'm kind of thinking I don't want to mortgage any more of my future. It's a tough line to walk. So
that's brutal, man. The
yeah,
Acuna,
I'm still in the mix, but I mean, I could make more moves to try to win, but without Acuna, Castellanos out several weeks, it's going to be it'd be really tough to overcome.
Acuna has been such a bombshell in all formats, but I mean, I'm sure we've got tons of listeners who, like, things were looking so good in terms of getting that big payday prior to that Acuna injury. But I mean, you lose a guy like that, doesn't really matter what you got behind him. I mean, you're not making up those stats.
Well, let's talk about your dynasty ranking update, which, as you said, will be coming to the site on Thursday, maybe live now, depending on when you're listening to this. Let's talk about some fallers. Anthony Rendon, man, our main event team's doing pretty well, but if we could just have that pick back and go any other route, realistically, how far does he fall for you in Dynasty, Anthony Rendon?
Well, I kind of wanted to get your take too, just because we have him together. Yeah, I mean, if we could just redo the Rendon, I mean, I regret the Luke Voigt pick too, but at least like Luke Voigt's a guy that you and I have both really loved. Like Rendon was a pick where I was like, that's the only league I have Rendon in this year, and that's the only draft I even considered taking him in, and I've regretted it all year long. I mean, he wasn't. I mean, he was really good last year. Like, do we think that this is just one of those crazy years where he hasn't been healthy, and he's going to be a big time bounce back candidate next year, or is he 31 and is his body starting to break down? I mean, what do you think?
I'm inclined to not put too much stock into this and write him off. It's a bad year, but I don't know, man. I think he should be fine. Maybe not fine as like a top 3 round pick, but I think he'll be a top 100 guy for a few more years to come. I wouldn't bump him outside the top 100 for Dynasty, would you? Actually, you sent me your list so I could look at myself.
Well, I actually, it's not going to be that useful for where the guys are because I haven't added the prospects yet.
Oh, I got you.
But let me just list like the guys that I have him kind of around, and you can tell me if he should be in a different area. So I've got him around like JT Realmuto. These are for OBP, by the way. 2-catcher OBP. JT Realmuto, Kettle Marte, Reese Hoskins, JD Martinez, Jose Barrios, Sal Perez, Nolan Arenado. Like, does that seem like the right range?
Yeah, that sounds right. I think him and Arenado are really good, like level analysis. You're kind of like a baseline for what you can expect for Anthony Rendon. Like Arenado outside of Coors. I know it's been a bad year, but I mean, think about how many bad stretches we've seen over the years. They happen. It's baseball, and maybe Mike Trout being off so long has hurt Rendon a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean that's kind of narrative, but maybe more pressure and carrying a greater burden. Although Ohtani's lifted that burden. Crazy that he is closing in on 40 homers already. Ohtani, absolutely insane. But yeah, I see you haven't added the prospects yet, but maybe Rendon will be bumped out of your top 100. I'll have to wait and see for that. But Zach Gallen dealt with like 3 separate injuries, I believe, or at least 3 separate stints on the IL. I thought he was a real ace, but is he kind of a guy you view as in Dynasty as like a 2 or 3 rather than an ace?
Well, I lumped like Zach Gallen and Max Fried together in the rankings just because they were 2 young, burgeoning aces. Certainly more so with Gallen probably than Fried, but it's just with Gallen, those injuries, those arm injuries, and then he comes out and has the worst command we've ever seen from him. And he's got a 1.4 whip right now. I basically listed guys where I just am really struggling with where to put them on that rundown because I absolutely love healthy Gallen. I just don't know. I don't know if he's at 100% right now, and I don't know if like when to expect him to be at 100%. So I'm kind of thinking he's sort of borderline top 100 as well. Same with like Max Fried, even though they're both, they should be kind of entering their primes right now. But it just seems like both guys have just not really been right this year and have maybe been pitching through stuff. And it's taken a toll on their overall production. But, you know, with a hitter, it's a lot easier to just say, oh, well, he's going to bounce back next year. He'll have a full offseason to get healthy. But with pitchers, it's just, you know, you don't really know if it's something that like might require like a cleanup procedure or something like that. Or, you know, what exactly is going on. Obviously with all the spider tack stuff, I mean, that could be a factor too. It's just, I don't really know what to do with Zach Gallen.
Yeah, really tough to figure out. And I know it's hard to evaluate all players coming off the shortened 2020 season, but pitchers especially, like, just so hard to evaluate these guys because they're fatigued. You know, they're dealing with injuries at a higher rate. It's just, you know, in Gallen's case, he had that fractured forearm from taking BP in the cages. You just don't know how things have piled up for him and affected his performance. Two of the bigger busts on the offensive side for me in the middle infield. I love these guys in draft season, so I'm glad to hear you're having a great year. These guys are holding my year back in fantasy baseball. Gavin Lux and Gleber Torres. Maybe I should have seen Torres coming because really since 2019 the power has dried up. But Lux, I just don't know. I don't see how he struggled this badly in that situation. Maybe the in and out of the lineup has hurt, but pretty hard to fathom this outcome this year for Gavin Lux.
Yeah, you know, I mean, he's been a little unlucky, but even if he'd been hit, like his XBA is 252. So like if I told you like, you know, he was hitting 252, you'd probably feel a little bit better, but
yeah,
you know, he's still not really helping you that much. And I think the most troubling thing with Lux has been the power and speed or lack thereof. Just 6 home runs and 3 steals in 82 games. I mean, that's not good. That's not good. And you know, I mean, it's been almost 500 plate appearances in the majors for him so far. You know, it's not enough to say that a guy sucks, but it's a decent sample size of him being well below league average as a hitter. And you know, I'm gonna have him outside my top 100, and I'm gonna have Gleber Torres outside my top 100. And with Torres, it's a lot easier to kind of figure out what sort of happened. We had the juice ball in 2019, and he hit for a ton of power, and he has not hit for much power at all since then. And so if we get another juice ball, maybe he'll have a bounce back season. I mean, unlike Lux, at least Gleber Torres is kind of maxing out to the best of his abilities with everything other than that power. He's walking a lot. He's stolen 10 bases. I mean, if you could have told people in draft season that Gleber Torres would have 10 steals before the end of July, he probably would have gone a round or two earlier than he was going, right? So, I mean, the steals have been nice, but I just think that the power, the true power with with the ball that we're currently using is just nowhere near what it looked like it might have been in 2019. And so I think these are guys that, you know, if you can still sell them as top 100 dynasty pieces, I mean, I think it's probably a solid time to do that. Like selling low, like everyone's scared to sell low, but you know, I think that like the A's sold low on Jesus Luzardo, but if Jesus Luzardo is this bad for the rest of the season, then his value is going to be even lower. And I think the same goes for Gleber Torres and Gavin Lux in dynasty leagues.
Matt Chapman was another guy I've been high on for a few years, and I still like him. The defense is great. I'll probably be in on him next year. But is he a guy who, you have serious concerns about? Should I be taking another circle around on Chapman and reevaluating things? Because it just doesn't seem possible that he's this bad. I mean,
right? Yeah, I mean, I think he can be not this bad, but still like be a fairly big faller in the dynasty rankings. Like I was pretty. I only have Chapman in keeper and dynasty leagues. I didn't take him in redraft just because of the hip issue, and it's. I think we can assume that that's probably played a role. I mean, he'd never had an ISO below 230 prior to this year, and his ISO this year is 152. So it's been a stark decline in the power department for him. So I think I'm in on him for redraft next year because I think the price will be pretty nice. Yeah. And like you said, that defense is going to keep him in the lineup, right? I mean, he's going to play every day, basically. He's going to hit in a solid spot in that lineup.
Yeah, sorry to cut in. He's slugging 371, yet he's still been worth 2 wins above replacement by Fangraphs WAR. Just speaks to that defense. And yeah, this is a perfect buying opportunity. I feel like even though K rate's up, but walking a lot, so that's good to see. But it's just a weird. It seems like a fluke year for him.
Would you trade either Gavin Lux or Gleber Torres for Chapman in Dynasty?
That's a good question. I think I would trade Lux. Yes. Torres. I still like Torres. I don't know. I can't give up on him yet. So.
And I got to ask you about another third baseman who was probably going even higher than Matt Chapman in drafts.
You mean shortstop?
I mean third baseman.
Gina?
Yeah, I've Eugenio and Chapman kind of back to back. Are you more worried about Gina?
Yeah, maybe I say this sometimes with the Reds, but maybe I can't see the forest through the trees and I'm too close to the situation. But I'd rather have Chapman over Gino by a pretty decent margin for 2022. I just, since the 29th season, he's just been pretty abysmal, Eugenio Suarez. And I do think maybe the team asking him to play short got in his head a little bit. And just he had made an error within minutes of the season starting. I do think there's something to that kind of getting in his head. And he's had some big moments. I was there when he homered off your boy Josh Hader a few weeks ago. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. I was pumped that you're at that game.
That was a pretty cool game. Thanks again to Jenny Butler for the great seats. But yeah, Gino just – I feel like he's probably on his way out of Cincinnati pretty soon in another park. He could fizzle out kind of quickly.
I just don't get how this happened because he hit 242 or better from 2014 to 2019, and now he's like this sub Mendoza hitter.
Yeah, man, it's been
like
so ugly.
Like it was basically after his age 27 season, he just turned into like a terrible version of Joey Gallo. Like I just don't understand like how that can shift that dramatically after that much track record of you being a certain type of hitter. So
it is amazing because track record clearly not everything. I mean, obviously past production doesn't guarantee future production, but for that kind of track record for a guy to just fall flat is pretty rare. I mean, to decline much this quickly.
I might go back to the well with him. Do you think he even goes inside the top, like, is he a top 150 pick next year? Top 200 pick next year?
Top 150, I say no. 200 maybe. Is he going to have middle eligibility? Probably did gain it for next year, right? Yeah. I could see maybe around 200. Yeah, he's still only 30, 31 next year. So yeah,
if he's
maybe.
with the Reds, and he's going outside the top 175, I might get in. But
one thing I didn't notice watching him play, but I see it on his Fangraphs page. Looks like he's gotten really pull happy in recent years. His pull rate was always around like 40, 42. Then 2019, 52% pull rate. 2020, 54.5. 2021, 49.8. So about a 50+% pull rate since the 2019 season. 2019, he did hit almost 50 bombs, but maybe he just got too in love with that power and trying to muscle it over that short porch in left field in Great American Ballpark. James, as we wrap up today, some other disappointments this year. Jo Adell, Alec Boehm, Ian Happ, Adolis Garcia was a big breakout early, but he's kind of got cold since. Keston Hiura. Any of those guys just not on your dynasty ranks? Or barely holding on?
I think a few of them will probably be off. I do just want to say, like, Clay, I've made a lot of mistakes this year. And I regret a lot of things I've done this year, both in fantasy and not fantasy.
Really?
But I don't know if I'm more ashamed of myself for any one thing than having Adolis Garcia in my top 150 on the last update. Like
I hear you, man.
I'm absolutely ashamed of myself, and I feel like I'm better than that. I feel like I know better than to have done that, and
he was just on another level though, early on. So I wouldn't beat yourself up too bad.
I think I published that last update, and like from that day on, he just started sucking.
You can pretty much tie it to that date.
And like in my head, I knew, like, I was like, what, like this can't be real. Like, and I was like fading Garcia, like on our radio show and everything. Like, and then he just like had done so much in such a short amount of time. I was like, well, he's got the power, he's got the speed, like he's got the playing time, like, I'll bump him inside the top 150, and I've just felt miserable about it basically ever since, and I really can't wait to update the list and have him where he really kind of belongs, and that's probably off the list altogether. But
it really was Aristides Aquino 2.0, like 14 homers in a month and a half, and then
Ian Happ and Keston Hiura are two other guys who probably just get bumped off. I don't know. If anyone wants to hit me up and make a case for keeping Happ or Garcia or Hiura on, then I'm all ears. But I mean, Alec Boehm, I'm probably going to just keep on because I just think I don't really see him ever really losing playing time, given their lack of internal depth. Jo Adell. If I had Jo Adell in a dynasty league right now, I would try to trade him. He hasn't really improved at what he needed to improve at AAA, and it's been a while. And like, I didn't think like Jarren Duran would have success in the majors. Thought he was going to strike out too much, but I feel even more confident that Jo Adell would not have success if he got the call. And you could point to that 279 average at AAA and the 20 homers and 8 steals, and you might be able to get something decent for him in a dynasty league. But I think once he comes back up to the majors and falls flat again, then I think his value is kind of in the tank at that point. So I would. I told people to sell high on Jarren Duran. I'm sure nobody listened to me, but I'm telling you this isn't even really selling high, but selling before the value plummets even further.
Yeah, and back to Adolis. I mean, in the SiriusXM Dynasty League, I spent over a third of my budget, like $400 out of 1,000 on at least. So you're not alone there, James, and getting excited about the first month and a half or what have you. In our main, though, we got Dalton Varshall a few weeks back for, I think, $1, was it? Or a couple bucks.
Yeah.
And that's been great. I got him in tout head-to-head where I'm fighting to hold on to a playoff spot. And it seems like this is, finally breaking out. I know people were hoping he would do that in draft season early on before it became clear that he was headed down. Speed at the catcher position, a very rare thing. I'm wondering, dynasty leagues, Dalton Varshall versus Alejandro Kirk, who's now back in the bigs.
Well, I'm really enjoying this Varshall run for our main event team, and it's probably just stupid to even hope that it happens, but I'm hoping that like people don't really catch on to it for drafts next year, because he's definitely going to have catcher eligibility. He's definitely going to have outfield eligibility. And I think he's going to play a ton of outfield for the Diamondbacks next year. So he might be basically an everyday player eligible at catcher who could go, I don't know, 2015, something like that. So I'm excited to see what Varshall's price tag is in redraft leagues next year. But I think the big elephant in the room with Alejandro Kirk is that Gabrielle Moreno has emerged as Toronto's clear-cut catcher of the future. He's already on the 40-man roster. He had to be added this past offseason. And if he hadn't gotten hurt, he'd probably already be at AAA. But he's been out with a thumb injury. And so I just don't know. I don't know if they're going to have the playing time available for Alejandro Kirk. That's probably my main concern there. I mean, Varshall is a decent athlete, obviously plays other positions. The Blue Jays would pretty much have to play Kirk at DH if they wanted to play Kirk and Moreno together. So I think Kirk is the better hitter, and it's not that close. Like, I think Kirk is a guy that could hit 270, 280 as a catcher. But I'm going to go Varshall because I think the playing time, like, he might have twice as many plate appearances as Kirk in 2023. So I'm going to go Varshall.
Very nice. I didn't realize Varshall was a Wisconsin guy, Marshfield, Wisconsin. During the draft, the guys on MLB Network were talking about how Wisconsin's kind of becoming a hotbed all of a sudden for baseball talent. It's kind of crazy. I mean, obviously Lux has flopped and Kelnick has struggled, but
it's a hotbed of busts.
Yeah, that's not great. But hey, you guys got your Milwaukee championship ring, so you can take a few L's on.
No one can ever take that from me.
You personally.
Yeah.
It's cool to see Aaron Rodgers back, by the way. I mean, I don't know about the office tee that he showed up in.
I do know about the office tee. It was lame as hell.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it, but I mean, I've watched The Office a couple times through, and I used to kind of like it, but it's kind of just
The Office is fine, but wearing that T-shirt it's
like a 38-year-old
man. A 38-year-old professional athlete. Like, what the hell are you doing?
With the shades and like the hair pulled back, it seems like he's maybe having like a midlife crisis type of deal.
Like, he thought he looked really cool there, right?
Yeah, like he still wishes he was like 25-year-old superstar. He's still awesome, but feels like he's maybe playing the cool guy route a little too much. Too cool for school, but I'll still be rooting for the Packers. Thankfully, I was never raised a Cincinnati Bengals fan. My dad was exclusively a Reds fan. By the way, that actually leads perfectly into walk-up songs, because mine is kind of like a nod to my dad. He wouldn't like the song, but tomorrow is my dad's birthday, so I'm kind of honoring him in a way by going with Lil Wayne's Bloodlines. We see a lot of, bloodlines, kind of, the fruit coming to bloom. Rose, totally mixed up my metaphors, but a lot of the bloodlines in the big leagues kind of dominating the major league scene right now. So Lil Wayne's bloodlines, try to find a clean version or just the instrumental. Clean version may not exist, but 500 Degrees was underrated Lil Wayne album.
Yeah, it's a good track, a good album. Was there a feature on that?
I don't believe so. Not on Bloodlines.
Okay.
I don't think so. But that was right before the Carter, and like right after everybody left. So 500 Degrees obviously play on 400 Degrees from Juvie, and I thought that would probably ruin their relationship forever. Some real heat between the two. But I think they made up down the line, Lil Wayne and Juve.
All right. Well, mine is I'm going with my second Jay-Z track. I'm sure that'll make Andrew happy. I'm going to go with Money Cash Hose, Jay-Z featuring DMX. Rest in peace. I think that Swiss beat will be just what I need to come to the plate and make something happen. And
I like it.
I mean, I'm sure they're not going to be able to play the unedited chorus in the ballpark, but I mean, go ahead and edit it. Everyone knows how it goes, so I mean, I'm ready for whatever.
Yeah, manually edited person running the songs. That'd be funny to like make them go into GarageBand and like make the song clean on your request. I actually am going to throw a bonus one in. And I had earlier in the week, I'd made up my mind that this is the song I was going to use. Then I just forgot about it. But We Gonna Make It by Jadakiss and Styles P.
Oh, hell yeah.
So that's maybe a bonus track Andrew could throw on. Thank you to our buddy Andrew Redding, by the way, who curates the Spotify playlist, keeps everything current with our selections. You can check that out on Spotify if you're into hip-hop or just good music. We have one non-hip-hop song on there. My choice last week. Anything else on your mind today, James, before we wrap things up?
No, man, I'm good. It was good chatting with you, and
you too.
Yeah, man. Those dynasty rankings will be up on Thursday.
Thanks, and check out our coverage of the trade deadline. As James said earlier in the show, our news crew is doing a great job, and notes in real time for every trade that goes down heading up to Friday's deadline. That'll do it for us, guys. Hope you'll join us next week on the Rotowire Prospect Podcast, sponsored by WinBet.
Try Rotowire today, free for 10 days. Get our premium tools, rankings, analysis, and breaking news alerts. No credit card required. Go to rotowire.com/try.